is Jesus? Who is Jesus? It's one of the most important questions anyone can ever ask. If you stop people today in Lee-on-the-Solent this afternoon and ask them, who is Jesus? You will probably receive quite a wide range of answers. Some would say he's a great teacher. Some might say he's a revolutionary. Some might say, I don't know if he existed. Others might simply call him a good man who inspired millions. Even today, almost 2,000 years after he lived, almost everyone has an opinion about Jesus, whether it is positive or negative. And his impact has spread throughout the world. He is celebrated in many different countries as being one of their own. I was on holiday last week, visiting a French church, and it was interesting to see people buy versions of the Nativity in the gift shop that reflect Jesus as being where they are from. Here's just a few of some of my favourite Jesuses that I came across. So this is the French Jesus, of course, in France. There is Jesus and the Nativity outside Notre Dame. We've got Jesus as depicted as being part of a Maasai tribe. Jesus, the Native American. Jesus, the Australian. Jesus from Greenland. Jesus, the Mexican. And this one I really quite liked. So this is Jesus as the Good Shepherd. And of course, you can see the people all around him are from different races and ethnicities. It's essentially all people around the world recognizing Jesus as one of their own, as a figure who transcends countries and cultures. And when I went to buy one, I did see this one and thought, oh, that is quite good. But I did really fancy Jesus with a chihuahua, so I went for the Mexican one instead. But I like the idea of this one. Jesus is a figure who transcends countries and cultures. People embrace him as one of their own. Jesus would have likely agreed and wanted all of humanity to feel connected to him. And of course, there is more to him than thinking just about the Nativity. He invites every single one of us to question who he is. And our passage today helps us reflect and answer that question. Who did Jesus want us to think that he was? Our passage today begins with Jesus travelling north to Caesarea Philippi. He decided to take some time away from the crowds who constantly followed him. Throughout Matthew's Gospel, Jesus has performed many miracles and gathered much attention. And so he responds by drawing away with those closest to him, his disciples. At this place, Jesus decides to test them. He asks them the question, who do people say that the Son of Man is? In reference to himself. The term the Son of Man is understood biblically in different ways. And there are three different senses by which we can understand it. First, the Son of Man is a simple self-description. Son of man in Hebrew is Ben Adam. Ben Adam, which simply means human being, a mere son of Adam, or humanity. In Psalm 8:4, for example, it says, "What is man that you are mindful of him? Son of man, or humanity, that you care for him?" So it was used as a simple description of being human. In the context of the Bible, it also has a second sense. It describes human mortality and fragility in contrast with the majesty and power of God. Essentially, in this sense, it means mortal man. So, in some ways, mortal man is like saying finite man, man who will not live forever. And this, of course, is being used by Jesus not too far away from his own death. He was very aware of his own mortality. And thirdly, Son of Man perhaps most famously is known from the apocalyptic vision of the Old Testament book of Daniel. This describes one like a son of man, that is, a human, being exalted, coming on the clouds, up to the throne of the Ancient of Days to inherit an eternal kingdom. In this, the Son of Man was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. Within Daniel, this Son of Man figure symbolizes the people of Israel, fragile and trampled by the various beasts of the sea, but ultimately exalted by God's grace, power, and faithfulness. It is in Jesus' victory over death that is the beginning of the fulfillment of this vision. And through his resurrection and ascension, we know that God's kingdom will continue to grow. So the term Son of Man can mean quite a lot. A figure of victory, yet also a figure who is mortal. In the context of Jesus' death and resurrection and ascension, it makes quite a lot of sense that Jesus decided to use this language to describe himself. And so Jesus asks his disciples the question, who do people say that the Son of Man is? As he refers to himself. Other prophets are mentioned. They suggest he is symbolically like John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets speaking on behalf of God. These were highly complimentary, but not what Jesus was looking for. The disciples had followed Jesus for months, watched him heal the sick and feed thousands. And now Jesus wants them to finally understand who he was. And it is Peter who does this, who correctly answers, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." There were many different messiahs in the Old Testament. A messiah simply meant anointed by God. There were different messiahs who came as priests, like Aaron, and kings like Solomon and David. Even the foreign king Cyrus of Persia was described as anointed for freeing the Jewish people from Babylon. And now we come to see the Jewish people here, later, under the subjugation of Rome. And they were expecting another anointed one, a Messiah, to deliver them from the oppressive power, just as had been done before with Moses. But Jesus was to turn expectations. He was a Messiah, but one who was to come to free them from sin. Peter's response to Jesus was, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." The crucial part of Peter's confession is not only Messiah, but the Son of the living God. Peter is not simply saying that Jesus is a great human leader chosen by God. He is recognizing that Jesus has a unique relationship with God himself. Peter recognized that Jesus was far more than an ordinary prophet. As Jesus explains, that it was God who revealed this to him. Now we come across one of the most discussed verses in church history. Jesus says, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Peter is described as the rock on which Jesus will build his church. To those who are Roman Catholic, Peter is the rock on which the church is built, the first pope. And this authority is then passed on to his successors in the role, the popes who lead and guide the church. And to others, Peter is different. He's a representative person of the developing Christian faith and a leader amongst equals, rather than founding the papal establishment. Both see Peter as the rock of the church, but they differ on what this means. Similarly, we also have a widely quoted metaphor of Jesus handing the keys of heaven to Peter. This has been interpreted differently throughout church history. And many of you might imagine Peter standing at the pearly gates of heaven in the afterlife, controlling admission. This is quite popular in our culture, and the most recently I've heard it is in Coldplay's Vida La Vida, referring to St. Peter's role, but of course it's been in many different films and songs throughout our time. But this image, however, is not meant to see Jesus as Peter as a literal doorman, but something more like a steward of the household of Israel, drawing from imagery in Isaiah and Revelation. Peter is depicted as the chief steward in the household, bearing the keys of the storehouses, which give appropriate provisions to the people of God. So he's not a gatekeeper who lets people into the kingdom of heaven by looking at names on a list. Instead, he's more of a guardian who was the person who Jesus built his church upon, through giving him great responsibility as it continues to grow today. So as we reflect on this passage, we're all left with the question which Jesus asked his disciples: "Who do you say I am?" This question is just as relevant to us today as it was to Jesus' disciples 2,000 years ago. And eventually, every one of us must answer it for ourselves. Was Jesus simply a wise teacher, a moral example, a historical figure? Or is he, as Peter confessed, the Messiah, the Son of the living God? This is the question each one of us should think about answering, and it has great implications for how we live. If Peter is right, then Jesus deserves far more than just our admiration. He deserves our trust, our love, and our worship. So as we leave today, I wonder, how will you answer that question that the disciples were asked? Who do you say I am? I pray that God may give you the grace to answer with confidence, as Peter did. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Amen.